This video will explain the usage of two action cards in the Chesney. They are sweep and encounter. These two cards are more complex in their content and execution compared to other cards, but they play an important role in the game. To avoid misunderstandings and to ensure a good gaming experience, these two cards are selected for explanation. First, let's introduce sweep. The function of this card is to use the loyalty check to seek out one's allies and force enemies to appear, and the area of damage is also considerable. To play this card, a loyalty check is conducted based on the player's public faction, which is the faction card that has been flipped face up and has the higher number. It may not be the player's own faction. There are several ways to use the public faction to conduct the check. 1. If the player who played the card has a face-up faction card, they can point to that faction as the public faction. For example, if player 1 has a revealed Dragon Wings 3 faction card, they can point to it as the public faction for other players to check. 2. If the player who played the card does not have a revealed faction card, they can choose to flip one faction card as their public faction. Player 1 can choose to reveal either Dragon Wings 3 or Bearhead 7 as their public faction. 3. If player 1 has already revealed one faction card, they can choose to reveal another with a higher number as the target for other players' loyalty. However, if player 1 has revealed a Bearhead 7 faction card, they cannot reveal the Dragon Wings 3 card to conduct a loyalty check, as this would not change the fact that the public faction is Bearhead 4. If player 1 is dual faction, they can point to or reveal one of the faction cards as their public faction. For example, if both Dragon Wings and Bearhead cards are revealed, player 1 can choose either as their public faction. Once the player who played the card has decided on the public faction, other non-wounded players take turns conducting the loyalty check. First, other players can reveal or point out the same public faction to pass the loyalty check. For example, player 2 reveals a Dragon Wings card that matches player 1's public faction and passes the check. Although player 2 has another faction card with a higher number, it is face down and can be arranged this way. Player 3 has one revealed faction card but does not match the public faction. However, player 3 flips a higher number Dragon Wings faction card and passes the check. If a player does not have a matching public faction card to reveal or point out or chooses not to reveal their card, they can still pass the check by rolling a die and getting a result of 7 or higher if they have at least one face-down faction card. Player 4 does not have a matching public faction to reveal but decides to roll a die and gets a 7, passing the check. Player 5 also cannot reveal a matching public faction and decides to roll a die, but unfortunately, gets a 6 and takes 1 damage. Finally, player 6 already has 2 revealed faction cards, but neither matches the public faction and cannot roll a die. Therefore, they take 1 damage. After all non-wounded players have completed the loyalty check, if there are any wounded players during the loyalty check process, all non-wounded players must complete their checks before executing the faction judgment. If there is more than one wounded player, they execute the faction judgment together. Once this process is complete, player 1 continues their turn. Next, let's talk about the encounter card. We use this card in games with 6 or more players. Its function is to deal targeted and widespread damage, especially in the mid-game when most players have already revealed their faction cards. Before using this card, you must confirm that there are at least 2 public factions on the field, and the action card in red only counts non-wounded players. Now, there are 3 public factions on the field: player 2's Dragon Wings, players 3, 5, and 6's Bearhead, and player 4's foxtail. Therefore, player 1 can play the encounter card. First, from the public factions on the field, Dragon Wings, Bearhead, and Foxtail that we mentioned earlier, 3 encounter tokens are used to draw 2 factions. The 2 factions that are drawn will engage in a duel. The result is that Bearhead and Foxtail will face off. Next, each non-wounded player from the 2 factions will take turns rolling a die. The faction with the higher total wins, and each player from the losing faction will take 1 damage. Player 3, representing Bearhead, rolls a 1, followed by Player 4, representing Foxtail, rolling a 12. Player 5 rolls a 2, and Player 6 rolls a 3. Therefore, Bearhead only has 6, while Foxtail, with only 1 player, has 12. Each player from Bearhead takes 1 damage. If the total of both factions is the same, then all players from both factions will take 1 damage. Additionally, if one of the factions involved in the player with dual faction, such as Player 2, who has both Dragon Wings and Foxtail faction cards revealed, they will also roll a die if Foxtail is involved in the duel. The player can choose which faction to help if both factions are involved.